MIT, we are all for a better world. The universities up here clearly are on that same mission about trying to create a better world. So I'd like to introduce Greg Bayes-Brown from Oxford University Innovation, and he's going to talk about how university ventures can spearhead sustainability, innovation, and deliver impact.
You guys want to come on with me?
Yeah.
Take a seat. All right. Welcome, everyone, to this panel on university ventures and how they drive innovation and impact. I'm filling in for Thierry Hellis, the editor of GUV. For those of you who don't know me, I am the former editor of GUV, and whilst I am communications manager at Oxford University Innovation, today I will be wearing my former journalist hat. I'm joined today by Dr. Poonam Malik, who is the head of investments at Strathclyde University, who made the jump from university academic to university investor. I'm also joined by Rosie Bennett, who is the investment manager for Set Squared, who, among her many accolades, brought together social enterprise with universities in the south of England. Also joined by Riam Kanso, who is the founder of Conception X, a venture builder focused on deep tech, helping PhDs with big ideas, who previously ran UCL's student entrepreneurship program. And I'm also joined by my colleague from OUI, Dr. Mark Mann, who is leaving OUI to launch his own strategic innovation consultancy focused to, in his words, how to get shit done. For those of you with eagle eyes, you'll notice that I'm wearing a Star Trek jacket. This is after 10 years of working in university innovation, either reporting on it globally or what we've been doing in Oxford. I believe this is the future that we should be aiming for. However, we are missing that target massively at the moment. A week ago, I read a report from the System Change Lab that stated we are failing on every front in tackling climate change. Meanwhile, when I was getting ready for this panel here today, I read that researchers from ETH Zurich, which is the #1 university in the world for company creation, Oxford is #2 if you're wondering, and they have figured out how to make carbon neutral fuels from air and sunshine. So I'm sure we will see a spin out based on that from ETH Zurich in the near future. So the question for the first question for the panelists is, the message from researchers in Glasgow is clear. We need radical transformational change across all aspects of society, and we need it now. What role can university innovation play in achieving this change? Ria.
Oh, okay. I'm going first. This is a really interesting question now because this is the day after our Conception X demo day. And yesterday we had 13 finalists PhD finalists from different universities presenting their work. And we decided to give the award to a team from Edinburgh and Strathclyde who are building wind turbines. Myriad Wind, that's their name. And I think, this was just an example, but I think clean energy and all of that is very crucial right now. And I think what we can do as universities is to just allow for public sector innovation to thrive a bit more, allow students to take more risks. Don't think of a PhD as a way to write a thesis that no one reads. Let people experiment with the labs that government has heavily invested in and give them more freedom to take risks as well.
Excellent. Poonam, coming from an academic background and then moving into investing, I'm sure you have a take on this as well.
Thank you, and pleasure to be here, and good to see you all in 3D as we talked about yesterday. So I suppose the difference and the place that universities have, we were talking about the factory yesterday. So universities are actually innovation factories which are creating these, and as we just heard, that the staggering amount of innovative startups, spin-outs that have been created from the universities. The reason that they are able to do that is because of that it's like Strathclyde's motto is a place of useful learning. And it's a collaboration and the congregation of the brain power that is there, the collaboration that between students, researchers, professors, and public sector ecosystem that comes together. And as a result, these are hotbed for innovation, and that innovation eventually comes to the next stage that we can either publish it and keep it on the shelf, or we can make it useful and make it something that can solve real world problems, and that's where the spin-outs and startups come.
Set Squared knows a good thing or two about being an innovation factory, don't they?
Yeah, so I'm here representing around 500 spin-outs, scale-ups, startups in the Set Squared ecosystem across the 6 research-intensive universities. And yeah, I think I agree that innovation is it's the lifeblood of universities. And also, I think we understand the currency of impact as well, because that's how we get funded. And it's a direction of travel for a lot of research. I think the key is actually embedding that innovation in problems. And I think that's the disconnect potentially between the university innovation ecosystem and the world here with the corporates and all the discussions at COP26. I think we need to bring that world closer together.
Excellent. Mark?
Well, I can guarantee to everyone that very few people have read my thesis.
Mine too.
But one thing that's specific about university innovation is that when I was an academic, I used to go to conferences and I used to get battered left, right and centre by my fellow academics who were tearing my ideas to pieces, challenging them. When you publish a paper, it's peer-reviewed. So when it gets to the state of publication, you know that you've got an innovation that works and it's been tested by your competitors. And there are ways of getting around that system, but it's a really sound basis for solving the problems that we've got in the world at the moment. And so what you've got, I've been privileged to see in Oxford some excellent ideas, far better than the stuff that was in my thesis. And what's been really good fun is being able to do what I can to help them, that impact from those ideas to grow.
Excellent. I mean, that kind of answers my next question, which would be, what is the unique aspect of university innovation and ventures, which differs them from regular startups? But I guess we can also talk a bit about social ventures, but I'll come back to you on that. Interested from your point of view, Riam, how you see what's coming through from your PhD students is different from, guys in the basement working on an app, for example.
Yeah, I mean, I think because all of our spin-outs are commercializations of a PhD thesis, they're inherently trying to solve a problem or have meaningful scientific discovery. So I think the whole tech for good is very much in the DNA of university spin-outs. We see very little in terms of people trying to build some kind of commercial app or whatever. It's usually health, climate, and even the fintechy ones have an innovation or tech-forward aspect in them. And I think it's fascinating. So.
Poonam, with what you're seeing as an investor, what's the difference between a spin-out that you'd invest in and, say, a startup? What are we looking at there?
So following on from Riam's point, I think because it is coming out of the university, majority of the time, these are based in rich intellectual property, technology-rich businesses with deep research behind that and data to support it. So both those, combination of that, it makes it a more attractive prospect, but also it has the longevity and sustainability to go forward because there is possibility to innovate further and have the second, third, and fourth generation. And then if it's a property, because it's coming out from the universities as a part of, so one of the key things that university do is patenting its own intellectual property, and that's attractive to investors because they can see future in it, they can see backability and bankability in it. So I think that is what is make attractive because it's a long-term horse on which you are betting, and you are betting with some substance behind it. App developed on its own can be innovative and very market-focused, but sometimes it's longevity and where is the next iteration going to come from can be challenging.
Excellent.
I would say as well, the challenge as well is that the difference between startups and spin-outs, both are innovation-led, and we work with both, is that spin-outs are led by academics. And there's a difficulty going from an academic mindset to an entrepreneurial mindset, which I think is where the accelerators and the support programs are so key. And we run a program called iCure, which is Innovation to Commercialization of University Research. And it's a cohort-based customer discovery program, and it's absolutely amazing, where you get researchers who have been working in the labs for maybe years, have an idea of what their technology might be applicable for. They go and then speak to 100 end customers, and that's many of the organisations here. They reach out to end customers and have that conversation. And there's always a pivot, there's always a transformational moment where they realise the real-world application of that research, and that's really key. And I think that's when they actually go from that spin-out mentality to being a startup.
Right, we're talking about startups and startups and spin-outs, but you and I know that we now have a third branch in social ventures.
Yeah.
Would you like to?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so tell a very brief story. I was very soon after joining OUI, 6.5 years ago now, I was asked to develop a brief in humanities and social sciences, so not just technology, but also in the humanities and social sciences as well. And it became perfectly clear from very early on, when you've got departments like geography, international development, not many patents, but also lots of innovations that could be widely deployed in developing nations, other places just outside the UK. And it seemed that social ventures or social enterprise was a good way of developing those interventions and rolling them out. The VC model is not necessarily going to be a perfect way of doing things in, say, Mali or Costa Rica or somewhere like that. And when you're trying to bring people out of poverty, the VC model doesn't necessarily work, or the pure VC model doesn't work. So what we set about was developing a model of social ventures. So a company in which the mission and purpose of that company is protected in its articles of association, and it guides the directors in the decisions that it makes as the company grows. And it's there to focus on some impact measures, some clear, measurable effects that you want that company to have. And what that has enabled us to do is to build a whole new set of relationships with new stakeholders, work with stakeholders in other ways. We're still working with major corporates, but through our social ventures rather than through our mainstream spin-outs, which are still growing. For instance, to give an example, our first social enterprise spin-out was from international development, and it measures poverty within companies, and it does so across LATAM. It's an accreditation scheme, so the more that you bring out your employees out of poverty, the better score you get. And it also produces an awful lot of data, which is useful to corporates, to the insurance industries, to banks and things like that. And it's a way of working alongside them, but in a way which makes sure that you continue to bring people out of poverty and it aligns with the academics' interests. And what's been really interesting about this is that it's brought a whole new set of ideas from the academic community, because they feel more comfortable in interacting with business, with the outside world, in a way in which is not purely about making money.
Good stuff. Going back to ETH Zurich, they're obviously incredible at turning out companies, but from what I understand, they lack the resources on the ground to scale these companies up, which is a common problem for university innovation around the place. Obviously, we're fortunate in Oxford to have funds like OSC. Obviously, Cambridge is well funded. But when you start to move outside the Golden Triangle, support seems to drop off. And that's not just a UK problem. That's a problem in ecosystems around the world. And even here in the UK, we still have massive problems with scale-up. So my question would be, what role can corporates and other organisations in this room play in accelerating university ideas? What stages can we encourage greater interaction? What can the corporates offer us? And what can university ideas offer them? Rosie?
So I've been really encouraged over the last day and this morning as well, conversations I've had with corporates about the desire to get involved and also desire to do some kind of seed funding, in a kind of experimental way, which we're really up for. But I think it's complex, and I think looking at the figures and the amount of investment and the investment levels that that the CVC world talks about, seed being 5 million plus, whereas we're used to talking much smaller amounts in terms of angel funding and seed funding. So actually, is there a funding? Is there a co-fund that could come about? That's that real early stage, seeding the idea, really getting it out of the lab. We already do it with Innovate UK. We have a investor accelerator partnership with Innovate UK, where we're ring-fenced grant funding, and our partners in that are the UK Business Angel Association. So we have a co-fund through angel investment. And that works really well. It's public money, it's private money coming together to back innovation. If we could somehow get corporate money as part of that equation, then that would make that such a powerful consortium, both in terms of access to markets, but in terms of seeding financially that innovation.
Poonam, have you had much interaction with co-investing with corporates up at Strathclyde?
So, as you rightly pointed out about the challenges of investment in space, yes, Golden Triangle is lucky. I suppose it started with the presence or access of VCs, because VCs like to invest in their backyards, as the going sort of saying goes. In terms of the opportunities that are available further north or further apart in various ecosystems, I think this is an opportunity because there is, as we initially discussed, that universities are innovation factories. And while the corporates and their venture arms, they have these ideas and they have the might and the money, funding, but they do need these innovative ideas to eventually for their own consumption. And universities need it for that product market fit, because that's not university's strength. Their strength is churning out ideas and possibly keeping an eye on the societal impact or the product market. So that's where corporates can come in. And as Rosie was talking about, it's that eventual partnership of corporates and universities and government public sector money. So in Scotland, we have Scottish Enterprise, on which I'm a board member. We do have co-investment fund and venture where they co-invest with the partners. So similar model. Obviously, it'll have to be sit down on the table and say who benefits from what and what is the incentive. So, but universities cater to such a wide range of innovative ideas that every corporate, whatever the interest might be, there'll be an alignment. And that fund you're talking about, the key for that would be finding the alignment-focused solution and then working together. And it will go a long way, because universities are not the commercialization capability. They can take an idea so far, and then it's up to possibly that's where the corporate strengths will come in.
I know up in Scotland you've got Epiderics, which is 3 Scottish universities and then 3 pharma who have come together.
Yeah, so it's a US venture sort of VC group that came in, and since then life sciences investment has gone up. So similarly, we could have sector focused or even stage focused, because at Strathclyde we have 2 funds, which is, as you were talking about, it's that valley of death. So very early stage, pre-MVP, nobody wants to put money in it. And then there is a later stage, scaling stage. But both have the ability to collaborate with the CVCs.
Riyam, what are you doing with corporates at Conception X?
Well, actually, we exist because of an award from Barclays of £1.2 million 3 years ago. And the reason it was unusual was because it was somewhere between CSR and like a collaboration as well. And I think that was great for us. We've also worked with Deloitte. But the reason I'm mentioning the Barclays thing is with these high-risk early-stage companies, I think we're talking about a generation of people who we call venture scientists, who are going to become world leaders in their phase, in their time. And I think corporates, I would encourage them to be less prescriptive about what these students build, because trying to kind of direct that is narrow at the beginning. And if you just see what they can do in areas that are of interest to you and then form collaborations with them, I think a lot more interesting things can happen. And very briefly, when we first started working with Deloitte, they were interested in legal tech, and their idea of deep legal tech was things like smart contracts and NLP and whatnot. But when we convinced them to just give us some money to let the students do what they want, they realized that in fact they were very interested in space and energy, etc. And I think there can be a lot more collaborations like this where corporates basically fund the workforce of the future, and what they might get is either startups they invest in or people they can hire later on. So doing lots of pre-negotiations about what you'll get, where the IP will go, etc., might not necessarily be what's needed now in this next stage.
I think it's just to follow on from that. I think it's being prescriptive about the problem, but not about the solution.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And that strikes resonance with me because it's got analogies with the impact investment community, where what you often find with impact investors is that their impact thesis is a little bit too narrow. The effect that they want to have is a little bit too precise. And we're all living in a chaotic world. Things are changing all the time. And actually what you do is by reducing your thesis down to a very narrow focus, you actually eliminate most of the good ideas that are out there. So yeah, absolutely. Being open to the new ideas. Innovation means being open to things that you weren't really expecting to know about before you started. And so yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. Yeah.
I think one point I'll say, combining your social ventures, because a social enterprise has to be a good business in the first place to make money and then to be able to contribute to the society and then do the difference. Most people assume that social enterprises are another arm of charity, which means the good practices are not applied. Whereas when now we are talking about the impact investing, positive, responsible investment, there is very little way, I mean, the way broadly you define impact, it can be applied to any business, and any business can be run in the way, it's just a structure, whether it's a CIC or limited partnership or Inc. But eventual goal is, so because that's the heart of the universities in some way, because as a civic or a societal university, you have your different wider stakeholders and you take different parameters, but eventually if it's the real world problem that's getting solved, and that's what is corporate, the CSR word is now turning into that. So I think there is a good alignment. It's just to come to the table and be part of the same discussions.
So I'm going to combine a couple of questions here because we've got 10 minutes left and I want to get through some stuff. IP ownership and equity is one of the most contentious topics in university innovation. If you had full control over the IP policies of the world's universities, what would you do with them to better enable and accelerate university ideas? And similarly, TTOs have fundamentally had the same business structure, despite having things like innovation and enterprise in their name since the 1980s. What new ideas could tech transfer officers consider operationally to move us from operating in a red to potentially not just being sustainable, but a growth industry? And how do we get there?
Big question.
Where begin?
Take your pick. Mark.
IP first. Let's get rid of that one. I hate patents, so stop filing so many patents. I think the IP management process needs to be vastly sped up. I think an awful lot of paperwork needs to be done, which is too late in the process. I think it's a particular problem for software innovation, which is small, agile, changes all the time. And all these forms everywhere, it just doesn't, what we should be focusing on, trying to get things out as quickly as possible. What I've tried to do as a technology transfer manager in Oxford is to avoid myself being the rate determining step. It's that, it's the rate should be down to the negotiations between the inventors themselves and the funders, and the tech transfer office should be stepping out of that discussion as much as possible. We should be trying to get as much of the good ideas out of universities as possible. On equity, again, I think the idea of piling it higher and selling it cheap is the best thing to do. If a university's purpose is to make an impact on society, that's what we should be focusing on, not making money. If we are making an impact on society, then we should be given the research funding to be enabled to make more impact on society. That's where our focus should be. And if you were to look at Oxford, the amount of money that we make out of the research excellence framework, of which a quarter is awarded for impact, compared to the actual money that we get back from equity realizations and license income, they're completely dwarfed. And that's where we should be focusing our time. In terms of, God, it sounds like a traditional Mark Mann rant. In terms of universities need to be more accessible to the outside world as well, which is why, excuse me, delighted to see the Cambridge and stall outside, bringing everything together in Cambridge. I wish we had something to do similar in Oxford. In fact, been trying to do that for 5 years.
Yep.
As of you, with cluster comms bringing everybody together, so that what you have is a two-stop shop. So you've got a front door where everybody can come in to access the university, and they're immediately pointed to the place where their core interests are. How's that to start off with?
Yeah, that sounds great. Rosie, would you like to expand on those?
Yeah,
What would you do with IP, and how would you transform tech transfer?
Yeah, I try and make it more templated and understandable from an external point of view. I think one of the key things that I've heard from people that I've spoken to here is that universities are inaccessible. They're hard to find the right person. So we act as a broker for the universities that we work with, but there's a push and there's a pull, and I think we're learning, we're evolving, and there's nothing like a good case study, a good unicorn to speed things up. I mean, Bristol GraphCore came out of Bristol, originated in one of our companies that was associated with SetSquared. And that has been such a game changer both for the university and also for the ecosystem, the Bristol ecosystem. And I think as much as we can do collaboratively to get more of those companies out there, the more we can start to streamline the process.
Yeah.
So with Conception X, I've indirectly dealt with TTOs from 30 different universities. So it's been fun to see the differences and everything. But I think PhD students are an interesting one because in many universities they own their IP, so when they commercialize it doesn't go through the TTO, so it's faster and then. But I think there's something about the structure of TTOs not having changed for many years because I think, they're some of the smartest, best people I know, but I think in many cases there's still quite a lot of risk aversion because it's more possible to you don't know if you missed out on a unicorn because it's not there. But if something happens and then the university somehow doesn't get back what it thinks at once, that's a more obvious thing. And I feel like the incentives are not always aligned for people to push out things that are risky and big and that can have the possibility to scale. So I don't know, maybe a magic thing would be to somehow get the TTO incentivized to do something by distributing some shares or having them have some upside, and what happens. It's a question to everyone. I don't have a solution for that.
No.
So those are two, I think, quite issues that I'm passionate about because you deal with them on a daily basis. And intellectual property, I know everybody in the room understands where the challenges are, and corporates keep them. Google and Coca-Cola own their own, so why should university not? And the public sector say they've paid the public purse monies. The question that comes is that, yes, if it is enabled, I think I would do three things. One is accessibility, visibility of it, having an open platform where all universities, IPs, and licensing options are available for people to see. And then there is a contact so that you can at least external world can see, because there is a push and pull option. Businesses need certain access to certain technology, but at the moment, unless you have that doorway, you don't know where to go, where it exists. So that's been the challenge, adopting similar thing. Second, making it easier for the spin-outs to do discussions for the investors in terms of having that division about universities founding stake, what percentage royalties, streamlining, simplifying this, adopting a similar framework so that not each time you negotiate, you have to make a different deal. And then, so eventually everybody wins, because if it's easy, you have a good experience. Nobody wants to cut other people's profits into it, but eventually happy experience. And in terms of the TTO structure, yes, I think the question in there is that, as I said in the beginning, universities were not set out as the places for commercialization. Sometimes in some circles, profit can still be seen as a dirty word. People think I would have not gone into academia if I wanted to do business. So that's the, I think, dilemma between realizing or still proving the benefit of venture arm. So as you say, when the company makes money, people on the business side understand, but not the academic side. So the challenge there comes is that maybe having its own structure so that you're not going through the university governance, which can be cumbersome. Access to talent, sometimes the people who are in the TTOs, if they've been there for 20, 30 years, it's not evolving with the times. And moving out, having more access like this, CPDs and updating, I think those will be the time to move, and more funding.
Fantastic. Okay, so we're coming up to 2 minutes left. Keeping your answers short, what can we do to inspire, accelerate, and support academic entrepreneurship and get it ready for this radical transformational change that we should be enacting? Mark.
I think we should have as many models as possible in order to get all the ideas out. It needs to be diverse, there needs to be different types of models. I think it needs to match the motivations of the people who are involved. So, if people are interested in making money, there's nothing wrong with that. Incentivize them to make money. People are just wanting to make impact with ideas, focus on the impact, but find the model which best fits the problem that you're trying to solve.
Good now.
I think for the academic side, to make them attractive to it, it has to be tied to their career pathway. At the moment, there is no provision there for them to engage in the business, but to also get onto their professorial pathway, because it's all driven to grant writing and students' PhD. So that impact, while our ref has included that, but it is still not in majority university. For that to do, and for the university leadership to understand that when the equity investment makes money, how big is the benefit? So I think tying those two would eventually do, and a relationship with external world, where the businesses and the corporates, to see eventually there is a use for your technology, and that will inspire them.
Yeah.
I think it's also showing academics that they don't need to change their identity into something else when they start businesses. And I think that identity shift is sometimes what keeps people away. That's why in ConceptionX we call them venture scientists and not entrepreneurs. It's to show them that they can stay as technologists and scientists, and someone else can do the businessy parts that they don't want to do.
Okay. And in closing, Rosie, one word that just blows this whole thing wide open for you.
Collaboration. I think, I'm going to say more than one word. I think COVID really showed the power of fast-tracked collaboration between, university research, government funding, private funding, and access to markets. It really showed that we could come up with world-changing innovation and bring that to market really quickly. And there's no reason why we can't do that again and replicate that model, especially in the context of climate change.
Excellent. Okay, well, our time is up here. Thank you very much to the panel for joining me for this great conversation around...
Can I say one more?
Oh, you want one more word?
Yeah, I think I've been here for 1.5 days, and while we mentioned this in passing, one thing which I have not heard too much of is the diversity and female investment and founders. So I would like to say, when you said something that will change, is I would say enabling, inspiring, and being inclusive. So that word is the key. If we need to change the diversity, if we need to change the investment scene, we need to have both more founders and VCs who are diverse.
In the spirit of inclusiveness, let's just hear one word from you two as well before we finish.
You go.
I think I'm done. I said
no, I'm done. Let's
there we
finish
go.
there.
Excellent. All right. Okay, well, thank you to our panel.